What if the girl fixing your car knew more about your secrets than your closest friends? And what if that secret could destroy everything you built? This is the true story of how a 10-year-old girl with a wrench and an old emerald ring brought down a billion-dollar empire. Stay until the end to see how one act of kindness uncovered decades of lies and changed lives forever. The late afternoon sun baked the quiet country road as heat shimmered above the asphalt. 10-year-old Riley Brooks was on her usual walk home from school, her backpack thumping gently against her back with every step. She was in no hurry. That stretch of rural road was familiar, and the heat was just part of the deal out here, 2 hours from Boston. But then, something unusual caught her eye. A bright red Shelby GT 500 Mustang sat on the side of the road, hood up like it was shouting for help. Next to it, a sharply dressed white man paced in circles, phone pressed to his ear, his voice raised in frustration. "I don't care what it costs to tow it. I've been stranded here for 2 hours. I have a meeting with the governor in—" He checked his gleaming gold watch. "Less than 3 hours, for God's sake." Riley paused. Her Aunt Valerie had drilled it into her. Don't talk to strangers, especially not angry, out-of-place ones in $2,000 suits on a country road. But something about this man, maybe the way his stress made him almost comically helpless, made her curious. Besides, she wasn't just any kid. She had something most 10-year-olds didn't. A small toolkit in her backpack and a head full of engine basics, courtesy of her Uncle Eric. "Excuse me, sir," Riley called out, stepping closer but staying cautious. "Need help with your car?" Logan Walker, CEO of Walker Industries, and a man who quite literally owned half of Boston's skyline, turned around, startled. His irritation flickered into confusion, then settled into the kind of patronizing smile that adults often wear when talking to kids. "That's kind of you, sweetheart," he said, glancing at her faded shorts and oversized MIT t-shirt. "But this is a high-performance machine. I really need a certified mechanic." Riley wasn't fazed. She walked over to the engine like she'd done it 100 times, dropping her backpack with a thud. "My uncle's a mechanic," she said simply. "He runs the only garage in town. I've been learning since I was old enough to hold a wrench. Let me take a look?" Before Logan could object, she was already leaning over the engine, eyes scanning with a focus that surprised him. "When did the problem start?" she asked, sounding way more professional than he expected. "About 40 minutes ago," he replied, his tone shifting slightly. "The engine started overheating, then just shut off." "Did you smell anything sweet, like syrup?" Logan blinked. Yeah, actually. How'd you know?" "Coolant leak," Riley said, pointing at a puddle beneath the car he hadn't even noticed. "You're losing coolant, probably from a split hose. That's why it overheated." And now, imagine this. You're a powerful CEO, stranded on a country road, furious, late for the most important meeting of your life. Then out of nowhere, a 10-year-old girl walks up, diagnoses your engine failure like a seasoned pro, and she's wearing the very ring you gave to a child you lost over a decade ago. What would you do? What could you believe? Because in that moment, Logan Walker wasn't just looking at a girl who fixed his car, he was looking at a ghost from the past, wrapped in grease-stained fingers and the sound of a name he hadn't heard in 12 years. Logan stared at her, genuinely impressed now. There was something familiar about her. Something in the way she narrowed her eyes in concentration, the confidence in her voice, the calm precision of her movements. "What's your name?" he asked, curious. Riley Brooks." She held out a small hand, smudged with engine grease. "Logan Walker," he replied, shaking it, still trying to process how this pint-sized mechanic had just diagnosed his $80,000 car faster than 3 roadside services combined. "I can probably patch it up enough to get you into town," Riley said, digging through her backpack. "I carry a mini repair kit. You never know when someone might need help." Logan could only nod as she went to work. With methodical hands, she found the cracked section of the radiator hose and sealed it with special tape from her emergency kit. "That should hold for a short trip," she said, standing back. "But you'll want to refill the coolant and get a new hose soon." Then, as she brushed her braids away from her face, something glittered in the sun. Logan's gaze locked on it. A ring. Not just any ring, a vintage piece with an emerald stone set in worn gold. More than the design, it was the tiny imperfection in the gem, a crescent-shaped flaw near the center, that hit him like a punch to the chest. It couldn't be. "That ring," he said, voice suddenly low and shaky. "Where did you get it?" Riley looked at her hand. "It belonged to my mom. Well, my adoptive mom, Grace. She passed away last year." Her tone grew softer. "She told me it was a symbol of an important promise." Logan felt the ground shift under him. That ring, he had given it away 12 years ago to a little girl named Riley at a place called Little Angels, an orphanage that vanished just days later. He hadn't seen that ring since. "Do you know where Grace got it?" he asked carefully. "She never said," Riley replied. "Just that it came from someone important, someone I'd understand more about someday." Logan, still dazed, offered to drive her home to say thanks. Riley hesitated only briefly before sliding into the passenger seat. During the 15-minute drive, Logan tried to keep it casual, but his questions came fast. "How long have you lived here?" "Since I was 3. Before that, I don't really remember. Grace adopted me from an orphanage, Little Angels. It closed right after." Logan gripped the steering wheel tight. "Little Angels," he repeated. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she said. "Why? Do you know it?" He didn't answer. Not yet. They pulled into the driveway of a modest, tidy house. Riley thanked him, stepping out, but before she could head inside, he handed her a card. "Riley," he said quietly, "if you ever need anything at all, call me." She looked at the card, confused, then tucked it into her backpack and waved goodbye. Logan sat frozen for a moment, staring at the ring on her finger as she disappeared inside. Then, with trembling hands, he pulled out his phone and dialed. "Ramirez," he said to his private investigator. "I need everything you can find on Riley Brooks. She's the girl, the one from Little Angels." What Riley didn't know, what she couldn't know, is that she had just turned Logan Walker's carefully constructed world upside down. That one innocent act, helping a man with car trouble, had just unraveled a thread that would expose secrets buried for over a decade. Secrets tied to a billion-dollar empire, a hidden past, and a young girl with a rare gift for fixing broken things. That night, Logan Walker didn't sleep. Instead, he sat in his penthouse office, overlooking downtown Boston, a glass of untouched bourbon in one hand, and a photo of the emerald ring pulled up on his monitor. His private investigator had sent it just hours after the encounter. Same ring, same tiny crescent flaw. There was no mistake. That ring had once belonged to a child he had promised to protect Riley. And he had failed. 12 years ago, when Logan was just a junior executive at Walker Industries, he'd volunteered for a corporate outreach initiative at Little Angels Orphanage. At the time, it felt like good PR: give some speeches, donate toys, shake hands with kids. But then he met her. Little Riley, bright eyes, obsessed with radios, toy cars, anything mechanical. She once took apart an electric fan just to see how the blades worked and put it back together better than before. Even at 4 years old, she had something special, something rare. He remembered giving her the ring on his last visit. It had been his mother's, a personal symbol of hope, of promises. "I'll be back soon," he told her. "This is to remind you I mean it." But 3 days later, the orphanage was shuttered overnight. No warning, no explanation, no more outreach program, no more Riley. And just like that, she was gone. Now she was back in the flesh, and Logan couldn't ignore the past any longer. Back at Walker Industries, Logan's assistant buzzed him the next morning. "Mr. Evans from Legal is here. He brought the Horizon Project documents." Logan swallowed hard. The Horizon Project, the luxury commercial development being built on the very land where Little Angels once stood. As Evans entered, Logan tucked away the investigator's reports. "Thanks," he said, trying to maintain his composure. "Leave them on the desk." Evans raised an eyebrow. "Didn't expect you to be interested in a 12-year-old property deal. That orphanage land was acquired under unusual circumstances." Logan opened the old documents, his fingers tightening on the pages. Wire transfers, property records, acquisition logs. At first glance, everything looked above board, but tucked deep in the files, Logan found something far more disturbing. A roster. A list of children from Little Angels. Next to some of their names, there were codes, annotations. One in particular stood out. Riley Brooks, special case. Contact CW. He didn't need to guess who CW was. His father. Charles Walker. Logan stared at the note until the words blurred. His heart pounded. Why had Riley been marked? Why had his father taken a personal interest? And just like that, more puzzle pieces began to fall into place. Ramirez called again, voice low and tense. "Sir, we found Grace Brooks." Logan braced himself. "And?" "Died last year. Car accident. Brake failure. But the reports got red flags. Inconsistencies." "What about adoption records?" "Officially, they're gone. Riley Brooks's name doesn't appear in any state system connected to Little Angels." "Then how did Grace adopt her?" Logan asked. "She didn't," Ramirez said flatly. "From what I can tell, Grace disappeared with Riley the same week the orphanage closed, changed their names, went into hiding. And now, imagine you're Logan Walker. You've spent your whole life climbing corporate ladders, building legacies, shaking hands with governors and billionaires. But right now, nothing in your portfolio prepares you for this. The little girl you gave a ring to, promised to return to, is alive. She remembers nothing. And worse, she has no idea that your own father may have been the reason she vanished in the first place. What would you do if the only way to protect her meant exposing the people who made you who you are?" And across town, Riley, still just a kid, thinks she helped a stranger with car trouble. But in truth, she's just cracked open the vault of one of the most dangerous secrets buried under Boston's skyline. Logan's blood went cold. Find out everything you can, and keep digging into Little Angels. Across town, Riley was in her sanctuary, a small cluttered workshop behind her aunt and uncle's house. Wrenches, radios, and half-finished projects filled the space. The smell of engine oil hung in the air, familiar and comforting. Eric stepped inside, wiping his hands on a rag. "Fix that old radio yet?" Riley beamed. "Yep, just a couple of loose wires. It works like new now." Eric ruffled her hair with a proud smile. "You really do have a gift, kiddo. Grace saw it early." Riley hesitated, twirling the emerald ring on her finger. "Do you think she'd be proud of me?" Eric's expression softened. Riley, she was proud every single day. Then, without thinking, Riley added, "I met someone this week. A man. His car broke down. I fixed it." Eric raised an eyebrow. "What kind of man?" "Rich. Like super rich. His name was Logan Walker. He gave me his card." Eric froze. He took the card from Riley's hand, staring at it like it might burn him. At that moment, Valerie stepped into the workshop, her eyes locking with his. They didn't need to speak to know what came next. "Riley, sweetie," Valerie said, voice tight. "Remember when we said we'd tell you more about Grace when you were older?" "Yeah. I think it's time." Later that night, Riley sat at the kitchen table, a glass of milk untouched in front of her. The house was quiet, heavy with something unspoken. "We never told you this," Valerie began, "but Grace wasn't just your mom. She was a nurse at the Little Angels orphanage." Eric picked up the thread. "When it shut down so suddenly, Grace, she knew something wasn't right. Children were being moved with no paperwork, no explanations." Valerie nodded. "She saw your name on a list, marked, targeted." Eric continued. "So she grabbed you, and she ran. They changed their names, hid from everyone, even from us at first," Valerie added. "Grace said someone powerful was after you, that you had to disappear. And she left this," Valerie said, pulling out a weathered envelope. "Told us to give it to you only if someone from the Walker family ever came looking." With trembling hands, Riley opened it. Inside, a letter yellowed, fragile. "My dear Riley, if you're reading this, then someone from the past has found you. There are things you need to know about me, about yourself, and about the ring. It's more than just a keepsake. It's a key. You are more than you realize. But you must be careful. Trust is earned, not given. Riley looked up, heart racing. "What does it mean?" she asked. Eric and Valerie exchanged worried looks. "We don't know," Eric admitted, "but we think it's time you found out." At that same moment, in a sleek office high above the city, Logan was staring at the name Charles Walker on his phone. His thumb hovered over the call button. For the first time in years, he realized he didn't know what kind of man his father truly was, or what secrets he had buried to build their empire. Across town, a black SUV idled near a school gate. Two men in suits sat inside, eyes fixed on the exit. "That her?" one asked. "Yeah, the girl with the emerald ring." Mr. Walker wants to see her immediately. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that Eric had seen them too. Parked across the street, he picked up an old phone, a burner, kept in case of emergencies. He dialed a number Grace had left him long ago. "Miles Bennett? You're the reporter investigating Little Angels, right? I think I've got something you'll want to hear." The phone call to Miles Bennett wasn't just a tip, it was a spark. Within an hour, the seasoned investigative journalist was sitting at Eric's kitchen table, notebook open, recorder running. Miles had been chasing shadows around Little Angels for years, whispers about missing records, closed-door adoptions, and a powerful family's silent influence. But he'd never had something concrete until now. Eric pulled out a dusty box from the attic and placed it on the table. Inside were files Grace had hidden away, clippings, hospital records, letters with incomplete signatures. Most importantly, there was an old photograph. Little Angel's staff and children posed in front of the orphanage. A young Grace stood near the back, smiling proudly. In her arms was a girl with familiar, intelligent eyes and tiny braids. Riley. "She saved her," Eric said, his voice low. Grace saw what was happening and ran before they could take Riley too. Miles nodded slowly. "This changes everything." Meanwhile, at Walker Industries, tension was building. Logan paced his office, reviewing documents over and over again. He'd barely slept. Everything he'd uncovered. Riley's disappearance, his father's involvement in the orphanage's closure, the coded references in financial reports pointed to something bigger than he'd imagined. Then came the knock on the door. Charles Walker walked in, unannounced, fresh off a flight from Florida. Tan, silver-haired, and furious. "What the hell is this about Little Angels?" he demanded. Logan straightened. "We need to talk, Dad." Charles narrowed his eyes. "That place was handled. It was a liability. We shut it down. End of story." "It's not the end. I found her. The girl. Riley." Charles froze. Logan pushed a folder across the desk. Inside were photos of Riley, the ring, the engine repair, and the orphanage roster with her name circled. "You marked her. Special case. Why?" Charles didn't answer. His face was a mask of ice. "What made her different?" Logan pressed. Still silence. Finally, Charles laughed softly. "You really want to know?" "Yes." "There are children born with abilities most people can't comprehend," Charles said. "Gifts, intuition, cognition, even precognition. Your Riley, she was Project 17. She sees patterns in chaos. Machines speak to her. It's not magic. It's data her brain processes differently. She was one of the best prospects we ever identified." Logan's stomach turned. "You exploited kids," he said. "Now stop for a second. What if you found out your father, your mentor, your role model used his empire not to build the future, but to manipulate it through children? What would you do if the person who taught you everything turned out to be the villain in your own origin story?" Logan isn't just dealing with betrayal. He's waking up to the horrifying truth that his own name helped bury those kids. And somewhere across town, a teenage girl is about to risk her life to bring it all into the light. Because secrets this dark, they don't stay buried forever. And when the truth rises, it burns. "We studied them," Charles snapped, "with intent to use that knowledge for defense, innovation, national interest. Don't act surprised, Logan. Our empire is built on vision, and hard choices. Logan's voice dropped. You had Grace killed. Charles didn't flinch. She was a risk. She ran off with valuable material. She was a mother, Logan growled, and you destroyed her. Don't get sentimental, Charles said coldly. You're still part of this. You signed those budgets. You approved that land buy. This is bigger than either of us. Logan sat down, suddenly feeling the full weight of every signature, every decision he had made under his father's guidance. Later that evening, Miles Bennett held a press conference outside his office. He had just published an article titled The Ghosts of Little Angels, One Girl's Story, One Empire's Secrets. It exploded across media outlets within hours. Logan watched the report in silence. He knew it was only the beginning. Inside Riley's room, she sat on her bed, rereading Grace's letter under a desk lamp. The paper had started to tear at the creases. Her eyes lingered on one sentence. You have a gift, and one day it will reveal both the danger and the purpose behind everything they did to you. Suddenly, there was a knock at the front door. Valerie opened it cautiously. A woman in a gray suit stood outside, badge visible. Naomi Carter, federal prosecutor. I need to speak with Riley and her guardians. In the living room, Naomi spread out documents, explaining the gravity of what had come to light. You're all at risk now, she said. There are people who don't want this information public, but we can protect you if you're willing to help us, especially Riley. Riley looked from her aunt to her uncle, then back at Naomi. What do you need me to do? Tell the truth. The next morning, a black SUV arrived at Walker Industries. Logan stepped out, not in his usual tailored suit, but in jeans and a navy jacket. Beside him was Naomi Carter. Inside, the conference room buzzed with nervous executives. The table was ringed with men and women used to power and secrecy. But today, that power felt shaky. Where is my son? Charles's voice boomed. The doors swung open. Logan entered calmly. Right here, and I'm not alone. He nodded to Naomi, who placed a thick folder on the table. Ms. Carter is with the Department of Justice. She has a few questions about Project Prometheus. Gasps rippled through the room. Logan, Charles said through gritted teeth. What are you doing? What I should have done years ago. Logan connected his laptop to the room's big screen. It flickered to life, displaying folders of documents. Financial reports, adoption records, surveillance footage, photos of 48 children. Over the past 15 years, Walker Industries secretly identified and studied dozens of children with exceptional cognitive traits, Logan said. Under the code name Project Prometheus. The room fell silent. You stole those documents, Charles snapped. I saved them, Logan corrected. Before you could burn them. And I'm not the only one who knows. A story broke this morning. He hit play. A video filled the screen. Grainy footage of Grace fleeing little angels in the dead of night, clutching a child in her arms. Then a clip of Charles instructing guards. Find her. She's too valuable to lose. Riley and Eric entered the room just as the video ended. Beside them stood Miles Bennett with a camera rolling. Riley? Logan said, surprised. You didn't have to come. I did, she replied firmly. Grace always said I'd have to face them someday. Charles stood, furious. You think any of this matters? That ring is just decoration. Riley stepped forward and held up the emerald ring. Is it? With calm fingers, she twisted the stone. A click. The ring split open, revealing a hidden compartment. From it, she pulled out a tiny silver drive. Grace knew, Riley said. She copied everything. Emails, videos, experiments, conversations between you and military contractors. She hid it in here. Charles froze. For the first time, he looked genuinely shaken. This stream is live, Miles announced. 10,000 viewers, so far. The doors opened again. Federal agents poured in. Charles Walker, Naomi said, you're under arrest for conspiracy, endangering minors, obstruction of justice, and more counts than we can list right now. Handcuffed and furious, Charles was led away, eyes never leaving his son. Logan looked back at Riley, eyes full of sorrow and pride. My mom taught me broken machines can be fixed, she said softly. But broken people, they have to fix themselves. In prison, maybe you'll have time to try. The takedown of Charles Walker sent shockwaves across the country. In the days that followed, Walker Industries crumbled at an astonishing speed. Stock prices plummeted. High-level resignations rolled in like waves. Government investigations expanded to include decades of corporate malpractice, bribery, and illegal human experimentation. Every buried skeleton was being dug up, one by one. News outlets ran headlines around the clock. Empire of exploitation, Walker dynasty unravels. From orphanage to expose, Riley Brooks, the girl with the emerald ring. Justice comes for Project Prometheus. Logan watched it all unfold with a strange mix of grief and relief. He had lost everything: his inheritance, his position, his family name. But somewhere beneath all the wreckage, something more valuable had been uncovered: a chance at redemption. Meanwhile, Riley stayed close to home. Despite the whirlwind of media attention and legal briefings, she never stopped spending time in her small workshop behind the house. The familiar hum of tools and the scent of oil gave her peace. That was where she felt real. Whole. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, she stood in the garden with Logan, watching kids play tag in the grass. It had been a long, quiet day. The air buzzed with the chirps of summer bugs and the weight of unspoken thoughts. "What happens now?" she finally asked. Logan looked out across the field, then at the ring on her finger. "We rebuild," he said. "Not just buildings, but lives." And that's exactly what they did. Months later, on the very land where the Little Angels orphanage once stood, a new building rose, the Brooks Center for Young Inventors, a sprawling, solar-powered complex filled with workshops, labs, and classrooms. A place designed to find and nurture kids with talents like Riley's kids who saw the world differently, not as something to survive, but something to understand and improve. Logan donated the last of his personal wealth to fund the project. He no longer wore tailored suits. His days were filled with grant applications, community meetings, and mentoring students who reminded him of Riley. The Prometheus Initiative, once a dark and secretive program, had been reborn this time in the open, with a new mission: to empower, not exploit. Riley, now 15, had grown into a quiet leader. She'd published 3 patents by the time she turned 14, designs for energy-efficient motors, improved emergency batteries, and a diagnostic tool that used sound patterns to detect mechanical flaws. Harvard, MIT, and Stanford were all courting her. But for now, she stayed right where she was. The Brooks Center was more than a school. It was a home, a sanctuary, a promise kept. Inside its main hall, a permanent exhibit lined the walls. Photographs from the past, clippings of the Walker Empire's fall, videos of Riley's testimony before Congress. At the center, beneath soft lighting, was a single glass case, the emerald ring, open to reveal its hidden drive. Next to it, a plaque. Every child has value. Every gift deserves freedom. Eric now served as Director of Engineering Programs. Valerie taught ethics and community leadership. And Riley, though still a student, was regarded as a mentor by many of her older peers. On the 1-year anniversary of the center's opening, a graduation ceremony was held under the wide New England sky. 12 students completed the program, each from backgrounds that had once offered them little hope. Now they had scholarships, internships, job offers, paths they'd never imagined possible. Riley stood before the crowd to give her speech, her voice steady, eyes bright. "When I was 10, I stopped to help a man with a broken-down Mustang," she began. "It was a small thing, or so I thought." She looked out across the audience. Logan sat in the back, surrounded by students, donors, and the families of graduates. His eyes glistened as she continued. "That day, I didn't know I was fixing more than a car. I was fixing a lie. I was exposing the truth. And I was beginning something I never expected. A future built not on fear or control, but on freedom and learning." She held up the emerald ring, now fitted onto a necklace. "This ring used to mean secrets. Now it means transformation." Thunderous applause followed, but transformation wasn't done with Riley yet. A week later, she received an envelope in the mail. no return address. Inside, a typed letter. The signature at the bottom made her pause. Olivia Walker, Charles's daughter. The letter read, "Dear Riley, I no longer carry the Walker name, but I've taken up the fight to expose and end every remaining program like Prometheus. You helped destroy one empire, but there are others. We've identified 5 more orphanages that ran similar operations. We've rescued 37 children so far. Some are like you. Brilliant. Misunderstood. When you're ready, they'd love to meet you." With gratitude and hope, Olivia Riley sat in silence, rereading it 3 times. Then she looked up at Logan, Eric, and Valerie seated across the table. "They found more kids," she said. "Kids like me." Logan's voice was quiet. "Then maybe it's time the center grew bigger." Eric smiled. "I've already started drawing up plans for the West Wing." They all laughed, but Riley's expression turned thoughtful. "What started as one girl fixing an engine on the side of the road," she said, "has turned into a whole movement. Grace would have liked that." Valerie reached over, squeezing her hand. She would have loved it. Later that night, Riley stood at the top of the garden, watching the sun disappear behind the trees. She wore the ring on a thin chain around her neck now, not to hide it, but to carry it as a reminder. The past hadn't broken her. It had revealed her. She was no longer just the girl from the road, no longer the orphan hiding from secrets too big to understand. She was an inventor, a leader, and a force the world was only beginning to recognize. 5 years passed. The once infamous Walker name had faded from headlines, replaced by something far more enduring: the Brooks Center for Young Inventors. On a bright spring morning, Riley Brooks, now 15, strode through the main building, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp and purposeful. The campus buzzed with energy. Labs hummed, 3D printers clicked, robotic arms danced to code written by kids who, just a year ago, had never touched a computer. "The East Wing sensor array is still glitching," she called out to a group of engineers following her. "We're getting false heat readings." She pointed toward a junction box high on the wall. "Start there. The grounding might be loose." They nodded, scattering into action. Even now, with 3 patents under her name and global tech giants trying to court her, Riley never stopped being a problem solver. Fixing things, systems, circuits, lives, was simply in her DNA. And the center had become exactly what she and Logan dreamed it would be: a beacon for brilliant, overlooked minds. In a glass-walled room at the back of the property, Logan Walker, no longer the CEO of anything, sat in jeans and a button-down shirt, explaining grant details to a group of investors. He spoke not of profits, but of purpose. "This quarter alone, we've discovered 23 students with extraordinary cognitive abilities," he said. "Each one receives full scholarships, mentorship, and the freedom to develop their skills in a safe, ethical environment. No contracts, no secrecy, no exploitation." Logan had changed more than his career. He'd given up his fortune, his legacy, and most significantly, his silence. What he'd once built on lies, he now tried to rebuild with truth. "It's not redemption," he often told people. "It's reconstruction." Former Walker executives had scoffed at his transformation, but Logan didn't care. For the first time in his life, he was building something that made him proud. Eric, who now headed the center's engineering division, stepped into the room. "Riley just finished a concept for a clean energy converter that could power a small house off 4 car batteries," he told Logan. "She's presenting it to MIT next week." Logan just smiled. Back in the main hall, visitors stopped to admire the center's permanent exhibit, a visual timeline of how a child's act of kindness unraveled one of the country's most unethical corporate secrets. At its heart, under bulletproof glass, was the emerald ring. No longer a symbol of secrecy, now it meant resistance, transformation, hope. And far away, in a medium-security federal prison, Charles Walker stared out of a narrow window at the concrete yard. Once one of the most powerful men in the country, now he was just another inmate. He refused all rehabilitation programs. spoke to no one. Still believed, in some corner of his mind, that this was temporary, that one day he'd reclaim everything. But power built on exploitation never holds. His empire was dust. Guards said he spent his days staring at the wall, mumbling about children who were worth something. But in the real world, the narrative had changed. Now, it was the children who defined their own value, not a line item on a corporate report. Back at the Brooks Center, the first ever class of graduates stood proudly in front of family, mentors, and media. 12 teenagers, all from overlooked communities, had completed the program. Each one had a future once thought impossible: full scholarships, startup seed funding, or roles in leading tech labs. Riley, though still too young to graduate herself, stepped on stage to deliver the keynote. "When I was 10, she began, I stopped to help someone fix their car. I didn't know that moment would change my life, or his." She looked at Logan, who sat near the front, eyes shining. "I didn't know then that one act of kindness could unravel years of secrets. But what I've learned since is this: you don't fix a broken system by repairing it, you replace it, you build something better." She paused, glancing at the ring around her neck. This ring once symbolized a broken promise. Now, it reminds me that we can rewrite our stories. The audience erupted into applause. Logan lowered his head, overwhelmed. The next day, Riley received another letter. It came with no return address, but she knew the sender: Olivia Walker. "We found 5 more facilities that operated like little angels, 37 more children. Some are like you. We've ensured their safety. And they want to meet the girl who changed everything." With gratitude, Olivia Riley closed the letter slowly. "It's not over," she said aloud. Logan, Eric, and Valerie looked up from the kitchen table. "Then it sounds like we need another wing," Logan said with a smile. Eric laughed. "We'll need more coffee, too." Outside the window, children played in the garden. Free, joyful, brilliant. Riley stood and stepped out into the sunshine, watching the wind stir the trees above. She thought of Grace, her mother, who had risked everything to save her, who had believed in the impossible and hidden a revolution inside a ring. "You were right," she whispered. "Fixing machines was just the beginning." That evening, under a golden sky, the center unveiled a new sign over the front gate. "Every child deserves freedom. Every talent deserves to shine." A promise. Not just to Riley, but to all the others still waiting to be found. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, a new chapter began. Not about secrets or revenge, but about courage and the quiet power of rebuilding a world where no child would ever be hidden again.